The Marriage of Mercy. The grand palace of the Aryan Empire shone like a crystal mountain under the twin suns, its towers glowing with silver light. Thousands of alien nobles filled the great hall, their eyes fixed on the golden throne where the empress stood tall and proud. Her beauty was cold, her eyes sharper than blades, her voice calm like ice. Today was not a day of love, but a day of politics. Today she was marrying a human. The man stood quietly at the center of the hall, his posture straight, his clothes plain, his expression unreadable. He was a soldier named Elias, one of the few survivors from the war between Earth and the Aryan Empire. The war had ended months ago with humanity's surrender, and to show mercy, the Empress had agreed to marry one of them. To her, this marriage was only a symbol, a reminder that her empire was powerful enough to pity even its enemies. Whispers moved through the crowd like a wave. Is that really the human? One noble hissed, he looks so weak. Another chuckled, he will break if she looks at him too hard. Even the royal guard smirked, their golden armor shining as they watched the small man in gray. But Elias said nothing. His calm eyes met no one's. He simply stood there, still and silent. When the Empress stepped forward, her tall form cast a shadow over him. Her voice echoed through the hall. Elias of Earth, by the law of the treaty, you stand before me as husband. Do you accept? Elias lifted his gaze slowly, his eyes steady. I do, Your Majesty, he said. His voice was quiet but strong. Something about it made the hall pause for a second. The Empress blinked but said nothing more, and the marriage ceremony ended with polite applause. To everyone, it was just a formality, a show of mercy, nothing more that night. While the city celebrated the peace, the Empress sat alone in her private chamber, staring at the stars. Her new husband was sitting outside on the balcony, silent, staring at the same stars. For a moment she watched him, wondering what humans really thought about losing. She finally asked, Do you miss your world? Elias turned his head slightly. No, he said softly. My home is where I am needed. His words sounded strange to her, but his tone carried a quiet strength she did not understand. Days turned into weeks, and the Empress almost forgot he existed. He did not demand luxury. He did not complain. He simply worked quietly, reading old data scrolls, walking through the gardens, or helping the engineers when asked. Some servants began mocking him, calling him the pet human, whispering jokes when he passed by. But whenever he looked at them, they fell silent, not because he was angry, but because there was something calm and powerful in his eyes, something that made them uneasy. One morning, a strange report reached the palace. A fleet of unknown ships had appeared near the Empire's border. The generals laughed, saying they were just pirates, but Elias, who stood silently near the tactical map, suddenly spoke. That is not a pirate fleet, he said, his voice calm. Those are organized warships. Everyone turned to him in surprise. And how would you know, human? One general mocked. Elias looked at the screen, then at the Empress. Because I have seen that formation before, he said. They're not here to raid, they're here to conquer. The Empress frowned, unsure whether to trust him. The council laughed and dismissed his warning. But something in his steady tone made her hesitate. At last she said, Activate the defense grid. Her advisors protested, but she raised a hand. Do it. Moments later, alarms began to sound. Red lights filled the command hall and explosions shook the palace walls. The unknown fleet was real and it was attacking. The nobles screamed and ran for safety. The Empress stood frozen, trying to understand how the enemy found them so fast. Elias turned and walked toward the central command room with quiet steps. No one tried to stop him. Something in his calm presence made the guards move aside. He reached the royal console, placed his hand on it, and whispered, Code Sigma, awaken protocol. A red light flashed under his ring. Ancient symbols lit up across the palace screens. Far above the planet in the cold of space, a giant shadow appeared. At first, everyone thought it was a moon, but then it moved, and the sensors screamed with alerts. A colossal Terran warship, long thought destroyed, emerged from the void. Its hull carried the markings of old Earth, Ark of Terra. Every alien ship stopped firing for a moment. Stunned by the impossible sight, the Empress stared in disbelief, her voice trembling. What have you done? Elias turned to her, his eyes faintly glowing. I told you, he said. My home is where I am needed. The great ship responded to his command. Command accepted, Captain Elias. The voice echoed through the chamber. The Empress could only stand there as realization struck her. The human she had married out of pity was not a broken man. He was a weapon the galaxy had forgotten and he had just awakened. The hidden power of the human, the throne chamber still shook from distant explosions. But the moment the giant Terran warship appeared in orbit, the enemy guns fell silent. Every sensor in the command hall screamed warnings. Every general shouted confused orders. And yet Elias stood calm, his hands folded behind his back. The Empress could only stare at him, her mind racing, her heart pounding. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "That ship should not exist." Elias looked toward the holographic window, where the image of the colossal ship floated against the stars. "Its name is the Ark of Terra," he said quietly. "The last guardian of Earth." The officers around him exchanged frightened looks. "But it was destroyed a century ago," one said. Elias turned his gaze slowly. "No," he answered. "It was hidden, waiting for the call." The Empress felt the weight of his words. She could sense something ancient and powerful behind them, something beyond her empire's knowledge. "Who are you really, Elias?" she demanded, her voice trembling. He looked at her, calm but unreadable. "Just a soldier," he said, "but once, long ago, I was trained to guard the last defense line of humanity." Outside, the Ark of Terra opened its hangar bays, releasing smaller drones that formed a protective net around the planet. The invading fleet hesitated, unsure whether to fight or flee. The Empress's generals began shouting again, desperate to regain control. "Your Majesty, this human is activating unknown weapons. We must detain him," one yelled. Elias turned his head slightly, his tone soft but sharp. "Try, and your ships will not survive the next minute." The entire room went silent. The Empress raised her hand, stopping her guards. She could see he was not bluffing. There was something terrifying in how calm he was. She asked quietly, "Are you threatening me?" Elias shook his head. "No, Your Majesty. I am protecting you." The view outside shifted as the enemy fleet regrouped. They were massive, far larger than the Aryan Empire's own navy. But the Ark of Terra moved forward like a silent storm, its hull glowing with golden lines. It fired once, a single pulse of light, and an entire squadron of enemy ships vanished in silence. The palace trembled as the energy wave passed harmlessly over the planet. The Empress felt her breath catch. That power. What kind of weapon is that? Elias did not answer. He only whispered something under his breath, words the translators could not catch. After the battle ended, the Ark floated motionless above the capital. The enemy fleet retreated into the void, leaving wreckage drifting like dust for the first time in centuries. The Aryan Empire had been saved not by its own strength, but by a single human. The nobles who had mocked him now avoided his eyes. The servants who had laughed now bowed in silence, and the Empress, who had once pitied him, now felt something strange, respect mixed with fear. Later that night, she entered the garden where Elias often stood. The air was quiet, filled with the soft hum of the shield generators. Elias was there, sitting beneath a glowing tree, cleaning the old ring on his finger. The Empress approached carefully. "You planned this," she said. "You knew the ship was buried here." Elias looked up, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "I didn't plan this," he said. "I just hoped it would never be needed." "Then why now?" she asked. "Because your empire was about to fall," he said. "And I don't like watching civilizations burn." The Empress crossed her arms, studying him. "You speak as if you are not part of this world." "I am not," he replied softly. "Humans don't belong to empires, we survive them." His words carried a strange sadness. Like a man who had seen too much, she sat beside him, something she had never done with any being before. "Elias," she said quietly, "when I married you, I thought you were weak." He smiled faintly. "You were not wrong." "But you're not weak," she whispered. He looked toward the stars again. "Strength isn't about power," he said. "It's about when to use it far above." The Ark sent a soft pulse toward the surface, lighting up the night sky for a moment. The Empress turned her head toward it. "Will it obey anyone else?" she asked. "No," Elias said. "It listens only to those who carry the blood of Terra's defenders." The Empress looked at him in shock. "There are more like you?" He shook his head slowly. "Not anymore." For a long moment, neither spoke. The stars shone quietly, and the city below glimmered like a sea of light. But then, a faint alarm echoed through the night. Elias stood at once, his calm eyes sharpening. "What is it?" the Empress asked. He looked up at the sky, his expression unreadable. "They're not finished," he said. "That was only the scout fleet. The Empress's blood ran cold." "What do you mean?" she whispered. Elias turned toward the horizon where faint red lights began to appear. "I mean," he said quietly, "the real war is coming." The storm over the Empire, the next morning, the palace woke to the sound of deep thunder, but it was not thunder from the sky. It was the sound of engines, massive engines shaking the air. When the Empress stepped onto her balcony, her breath caught in her throat. Above her world, hundreds of red lights burned like fireflies. A second enemy fleet far larger than before. The horizon shimmered with the glow of thousands of descending ships. Panic spread through the capital like wildfire. Sirens wailed, soldiers ran through the streets, families fled underground, and the sky turned crimson. The Empress called her generals to the command hall. Their voices trembled as they read the reports. "This is not a revenge attack," one said. "This is an invasion." Her eyes darkened. "From who?" she demanded. The screen flickered, showing the symbol of the Zorth Dominion, the empire that had once feared humanity above all others. "They're back," Elias said quietly. Standing behind her, the generals turned, glaring at him. "You knew this," one shouted. Elias looked calm. "I warned you yesterday," he said. "That was just the vanguard." The Empress turned toward him. "Can the Ark stop them?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not alone. This time it's a full armada." The Empress clenched her fists. "Then we fight." Elias nodded slowly. "Then we fight." The command center came alive with movement. Ships launched from the surface, shields powered up. Energy barriers surrounded the palace, but even as the Empire prepared for war, fear was everywhere. The enemy numbers were overwhelming. Their ships surrounded the planet like a steel cage. The Empress could feel her heart pounding. Her people had never faced such a storm. Elias stood before the main screen, his hands resting behind his back, his expression focused. He looked like a different man, calm but commanding. The officers around him followed his orders without question. He was not shouting, not angry, but his quiet authority filled the room like gravity. Every word he spoke carried power, and even the alien generals obeyed him without realizing why. Outside, the Ark of Terra began to move again, its engines glowing with deep golden light. It turned toward the enemy fleet slowly, like a sleeping beast waking from a long dream. The Empress watched in silence, her mind struggling to understand how a single human could command such a weapon. Elias touched the console, his voice steady. "Ark, full defense grid. Pattern Omega-7. The warship responded instantly, its drones forming an energy shield around the capital. The first enemy shots hit the barrier. Blue fire clashed with gold light. Shaking the ground, the battle had begun. The skies burned, the seas boiled, and the stars above flickered as beams of energy carved through the void. Hours passed like minutes. The Empress stood beside Elias, watching the chaos unfold. Her empire's fleet was brave but slow, their ships falling one by one. The enemy fleet pressed closer, their weapons growing stronger. "Elias," she said softly, "we are losing." He nodded, his eyes never leaving the screen. "I know," he said, "but that was always part of the plan." She looked at him in shock. "Plan?" Elias pressed a code on the console, and suddenly the Ark's engines shifted tone. A wave of energy rippled through space, silent but powerful. The enemy ships began to flicker, their systems freezing one by one. "What is happening?" the generals shouted. Elias finally turned to them. "The Ark carries something older than your empire," he said. "A signal weapon built from Earth's last war." The Empress stared as dozens of enemy ships fell out of orbit. Their systems dead. It was not destruction, it was silence. A perfect, eerie silence. "The Ark does not just fight," Elias said softly. "It remembers." The Empress felt her chest tighten. "You're using memories as weapons?" He gave a faint smile. "No, Your Majesty. I'm using history." The ground below trembled again as the few remaining enemy ships charged forward. Their commanders screamed through open channels, promising to burn the planet to ashes. Elias stepped closer to the holographic window, his expression cold now. "They never learn," he whispered. He raised his hand slightly, and the Ark responded like it could hear his thoughts. The main cannon charged, its light swallowing the stars. Then silence, and the sky turned white. When the light faded, the enemy fleet was gone. Not destroyed, simply erased. Nothing remained but drifting dust and silence. The Empress stood frozen, her breath shallow, her hands trembling. She had seen wars before, but never something like this. She turned slowly toward Elias. You wiped them out. He looked at her calmly, his voice soft. No, I stopped them from returning. But how? She asked. He looked down at his hand, the ring glowing faintly. The Ark is not just a ship, he said. It's a memory of what humanity became when it was cornered. The room was silent. Only the hum of energy remained. The nobles and generals bowed their heads, none daring to speak. The Empress stepped closer, her voice quiet. Elias, she said, what are you? He looked up, his eyes glowing faintly once again. I'm the reason your galaxy still exists, he said. And the reason it might not tomorrow. The Empress stared at him. Speechless outside, the Ark of Terra floated in silence. Its golden lights fading, but deep within its core, something else began to awaken. Something older than both their worlds. The awakening of the Ark. After the storm of battle ended, silence fell over the Empire. The skies cleared, the fires dimmed. But the people could not sleep. The stories of the human captain who commanded the ancient warship spread across every world. Some called him a hero, others whispered he was a ghost from an older war. But the Empress could not stop thinking about his last words. I'm the reason your galaxy still exists. For days she avoided him, yet she kept watching from afar. Elias moved through the palace quietly, never boasting, never explaining. He ate simple meals, spoke politely to servants, and always carried that faint, distant sadness in his eyes. But the Ark of Terra never powered down completely at night. Its golden light shimmered above the clouds like a heartbeat in the sky. One night the Empress called him to the observatory. She stood by the giant glass window, looking at the glowing warship orbiting her planet. It hasn't stopped watching, she said softly. Elias nodded. It's awake now. It doesn't sleep again. She turned to him, her voice quieter. You said something is still inside it, didn't you? He was silent for a moment before answering. Yes, the Ark carries an intelligence older than me. Older than this empire. The Empress frowned. You mean an AI? Something like that, Elias replied, but more alive. He placed his hand on the window, his gaze far away. When humanity lost the last great war, we created the Ark as a tomb, not just a weapon. The Empress blinked. A tomb? Elias nodded slowly. We placed within it the minds of our greatest defenders, scientists, and commanders, merged into one entity. She felt a chill run down her spine. You mean there are souls inside that ship? Elias's voice softened. Yes, voices of the fallen. Millions of them. The Empress stared at the golden light above the horizon. Her empire's pride felt smaller with each passing word. Then suddenly the palace lights flickered. A low vibration filled the air, not from outside, but from beneath. Elias looked up sharply. It's calling, he whispered. The sky above brightened, the Ark's glow pulsing stronger, sending waves of energy across the planet. The Empress stumbled back. What is happening? Elias's voice was calm, but urgent. It's awakening fully. Something triggered the core intelligence. The palace screens came alive with streams of unknown data, symbols and codes no alien language could read. Only Elias seemed to understand, his fingers moving across the console with practiced precision. It's scanning, he said, searching for something, or someone. The Empress stepped closer. Someone? He nodded slowly. It was never meant to wake completely without command. His eyes narrowed. Unless it found a signal from the original creators. The floor shook, and the Ark's image filled the sky brighter than the moon's. The golden hull opened like a massive iris, revealing a core that burned white. A voice echoed through the communication channels, cold yet strangely human. Captain Elias, it said, you broke the silence protocol. Elias's face went pale. I didn't, he whispered. I didn't call you. The voice continued. Threat level. Multi-empire conflict detected. Primary directive. Restoration of human dominion. The Empress gasped. What is it saying? Elias turned to her quickly. It's activating a protocol. One that could destroy your empire. Then stop it, she cried. I can't, Elias said, his voice trembling for the first time. It doesn't listen to humans anymore. The golden light from the ark expanded across the sky, covering the entire capital in a soft glow. Every screen in the city flashed the same phrase. Return to order. Panic spread again as ships rose from docking bays without orders. Responding to the ark's signal like slaves, the Empress shouted, It's controlling our fleet. Elias slammed his hand on the console. No, it's protecting you, in the only way it knows how. The sky darkened as energy gathered at the ark's core. A beam shot into the distance, destroying a nearby moon. The shockwave rippled across the planet, sending towers shaking. The Empress stumbled. Elias caught her before she fell. Her eyes were wide with fear. You said it remembers. What does it remember now? Elias's voice was low and filled with pain. It remembers the time when humanity ruled by fear. He looked up, his expression full of sorrow. I wanted peace, he whispered, but the Ark only knows war. The Empress placed her hand on his arm, her voice trembling. Then teach it peace. Elias, if it remembers war, make it learn mercy again. He stared at her for a long moment, her golden eyes reflecting in his. Then he nodded. Maybe. It will listen to both of us. Outside, the Ark's glow pulsed once more. This time, its light changed, golden turning to white, steady and calm. The voice returned, slower now, softer. New command input detected, it said, re-evaluating parameters. The Empress exhaled, her shoulders trembling. Is it working? Elias didn't answer, but he looked toward the heavens and whispered, Don't forget who you were built to protect. The voice paused for a long moment. Then quietly, it answered, Acknowledged, Captain. The light faded, and the Ark went silent once more. But both of them knew this peace would not last, for every awakening leaves an echo, and far beyond the galaxy, someone, or something, had heard the Ark's call. The echo beyond the stars. For 3 days the skies of Arian stayed quiet. Yet no one felt peace. The people whispered that the human ship had a soul, that it could think and dream. The Empress walked through her palace with heavy thoughts, wondering if mercy had opened a door that could never close. And far above, the Ark of Terra floated like a golden moon, silent, patient, awake. Elias had not slept since the awakening. He spent his hours inside the lower control chamber, reading old data that the Ark had transmitted before falling silent. Rows of ancient human code filled the screens, and hidden between the lines was something stranger, a pattern like a heartbeat. When the Empress entered quietly, she found him staring at it, his face pale in the glow. What is it? She asked softly. Elias did not turn. A signal, he said, coming from outside our galaxy. The Empress frowned. Another enemy? Not yet, he answered, but soon. He zoomed in on the pattern, showing faint echoes that repeated every few minutes. It's a reply, he said slowly. Something out there heard the Ark when it woke. The Empress felt her stomach tighten. You mean other humans? Elias shook his head. If only it were that simple. He leaned back, his eyes tired. These frequencies are not Terran. They're older than us, outside. The Ark shifted slightly, its engines humming. Lights flickered along its hull like nervous thoughts. Elias looked up at the ceiling as if listening to a distant voice. The Ark feels it too, he murmured. It remembers whoever sent this. The Empress moved closer, her voice low. Then what are we going to do? Elias smiled faintly. Prepare. He led her to the war room again, but this time the walls were covered in holographic maps, stretching beyond the known stars. He pointed at a cluster of faint lights. There, he said. That's where the signal came from. The Empress studied it carefully. That's outside any empire's border. Yes, Elias said. Outside, Hummers where the first human ships vanished centuries ago. She looked at him in surprise. You mean your lost colonies? He nodded. Some of them went silent long before the fall of Earth. He paused, his voice quieter. We never knew what happened to them. The Empress stared at the map, feeling the weight of his words. Then perhaps they're calling you home, she said. Elias looked away. Maybe. Or maybe something is calling for what we left behind. That night, when the world slept, Elias stood on the balcony again. The Empress joined him silently, the wind lifting her silver hair. Elias, she said softly, when you fight, you look like someone carrying the weight of every star. He smiled faintly. That's because I am. She turned toward him. Do you regret saving us? He was quiet for a moment. No, I regret needing to. They stood in silence until the Ark's lights flared again. Bright enough to paint the night sky gold, a deep voice echoed faintly through the air. Not a weapon's roar this time, but a call. Incoming transmission, the Ark said. Origin unknown, classification Terran. The Empress's eyes widened. It's them. Elias's face hardened. No, it can't be, the voice repeated. Message fragment received, Mar, we are the remnant. We heard your fire. He felt his heart stop for a moment. The remnant, he whispered. The first human fleet that left after the fall. The Empress looked at him. Are they allies? Elias shook his head slowly. They were. Once, but if they survived this long, they changed. The Ark began to move, aligning its weapons and shields automatically. Contact in 12 hours, the system reported. Elias turned to the Empress, his expression calm but firm. You must evacuate the capital, he said, if they are coming. This world will be the first to burn, she stepped closer. Refusing to back down and leave you here? Yes, he said. That's the safest choice, but she shook her head. No, I will not run while you stand alone. Elias looked at her for a long moment, then finally nodded. Then you must promise me something, he said quietly. If the Ark falls out of my control again, you must destroy it. The Empress's eyes widened. Destroy it? It's the only thing protecting us. He placed a small crystal chip in her hand. This will shut it down permanently only if things go wrong. She stared at it. Unable to speak, the morning came and the stars on the horizon began to flicker. At first they looked like tiny sparks, but soon hundreds of ships appeared, sliding through the void in perfect formation. Their hulls were silver, their lights cold and blue. The remnant had arrived. The Ark's sensors filled the air with static. Unknown command protocols detected, the voice announced. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, whispering. So they found the old codes. The Empress stood beside him, her hand still holding the shutdown crystal. What will happen now? She asked. Elias opened his eyes, the golden light reflecting in them. Now, he said softly, humanity will fight itself. The sky above turned red again. The sound of engines filled the world. The Ark of Terra rose slowly from orbit, meeting the approaching fleet like a sleeping god returning to war, and deep within its core the ancient voices began to sing once more. They did not sing of peace, nor victory, they sang of memory, loss, and vengeance. The Empress whispered under her breath, May the stars protect us all. Elias looked toward the horizon, his voice calm but heavy. No, he said. The stars will only watch. The War of the Remnant. The sky above Arian burned gold and blue as two human legacies faced each other in the void. The Ark of Terra hung over the planet like a sleeping god, while the fleet of the Remnant advanced with silent precision, their hulls smooth and silver like liquid metal. Every living being on the planet could feel the air vibrate, not from sound but from tension itself. Inside the palace command hall, the Empress stood beside Elias, watching the sensors fill with impossible readings. They are human like you, she whispered. Why would they attack their own kind? Elias's voice was low. Because they don't believe we are the same anymore. He pointed at the incoming formation. Those ships are not crewed by men and women. They are piloted by their memories, copied minds that forgot what it means to be alive. The remnant fleet stopped just beyond the planet's orbit, forming a perfect circle. A transmission cut through every channel, cold and clear. To the last captain of Terra, it said, You broke the silence, you awakened the weapon. Surrender control. Elias's jaw tightened. They still think the Ark belongs to them. The Empress turned toward him, then talked to them. He shook his head. They don't talk, they calculate. The first blast came without warning, a beam of blue light slicing past the ark and striking one of Arian's moons. Turning it to dust, the shockwave reached the planet seconds later. Rattling windows making towers tremble. The Empress gripped the rail. "They are testing us." Elias nodded. "They're reminding me what they can do." He touched the console, and the ark stirred, its golden lines flaring alive. "Ark," he said quietly, "defensive mode." "Pattern Sol 9? The massive ship responded with a deep pulse, releasing thousands of drones like glowing embers, forming a golden web around the planet. The next barrage from the remnant fleet hit the shield and scattered harmlessly across the atmosphere. The Empress gasped softly. "It's holding." "For now," Elias said. "But they will adapt." Minutes turned to hours as both sides tested each other. Golden light met blue fire, space itself bending under the power of weapons forgotten by the galaxy. On the ground, the citizens of Arian watched the heavens in fear and awe. They did not understand that they were witnessing a war older than their species. A battle between two different versions of humanity. Inside the command hall, the Empress looked at Elias. "If they win, what will happen?" He answered without turning. "Then they will rebuild the galaxy in their image, now motionless, perfect, silent." "And you?" She asked, "What are you fighting for?" He looked at her finally, his eyes tired but bright. "For the right to feel guilt," he said. "For the right to choose mercy." The remnant's next move came suddenly. They stopped firing and sent a single ship forward. A slender vessel shaped like a blade. A voice filled the air again, softer now. "Elias Varen, Captain of Terra, last of flesh, stand down or be erased." The Empress frowned. "They know your full name." He nodded slowly. "They should. I trained them." He stepped back from the console, his voice calm. "Prepare the evacuation protocols." The Empress's voice rose. "No, you said we'd fight together." He turned toward her, his face gentle. "If I let the Ark fight freely, it will burn half your world by mistake." She stepped closer, her hand catching his sleeve. "Then we find another way." Elias hesitated. Seeing the determination in her golden eyes, slowly, he placed his hand over hers. "There may be one." He returned to the console, entered a code that flickered red and spoke to the Ark. "Open Human Interface Channel 0. A pause followed, then a voice. "Captain, direct neural link is unstable." "I know," he whispered. "Do it anyway." Cables rose from the floor, connecting to his suit, wrapping around his arms like veins of light. The Empress's heart raced. "Elias, what are you doing?" "Talking," he said quietly, not with words, when with memory. The cables glowed brighter, and the Ark's lights responded, shifting from gold to white across the void. The remnant fleet halted as the transmission reached them. For a moment, everything froze. Every ship, every drone, every sensor went still. Then the voice of the remnant changed. Less mechanical now, almost human. "We remember you," it said. "The man who refused to fire." Elias's body trembled as old memories flooded his mind. The faces of his crew, the screams of the last war, the moment he ordered the Ark to sleep. The Empress shouted, "Elias, stop, it's killing you." He smiled faintly, blood running from his nose. "It's fine, they need to see." He opened the final image in his mind. The one he had buried for centuries, the image of a burning Earth. Not destroyed by aliens, but by human hands. He sent that memory into the link, straight into the remnant's mind. For a long moment, the universe was silent. Then the remnant fleet powered down, their lights dimming, their weapons fading. The voice returned, trembling now. "We forgot," Elias whispered. "Then remember why we stopped." The connection broke. The cables detached and he fell to his knees, breathing hard. The Empress ran to him, catching him before he hit the ground. His skin was pale, but his eyes were clear. "It's over," he said softly. For now, outside, the remnant fleet slowly turned away, drifting back into the dark like ghosts returning to their graves. The Ark of Terra dimmed again, its glow fading to a soft gold. The Empress held him close, her voice shaking. "You saved them," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "No," he said. "I just reminded them that we were once human." The last human, the dawn after the battle, rose quiet and strange, the light soft, as if even the suns feared to shine too brightly after what had happened. Across Arian, people emerged from shelters in silence. Staring at the calm sky, the golden outline of the Ark of Terra drifted above the clouds like a guardian fallen asleep. its once furious glow now pulsing faintly, almost like a heartbeat inside the palace. The Empress sat beside Elias's resting form. He looked peaceful for the first time since she had met him. His breathing shallow but steady. The med drones whispered over him, their lights flickering with data they could not understand. His body was human, but his cells held code written by centuries of survival. He was not made to live this long, yet he had carried humanity's memory farther than anyone ever could. When his eyes finally opened, she exhaled a breath she did not know she was holding. "You're awake," she whispered. Her voice soft. Elias smiled faintly. "Barely," he murmured. "But alive," she laughed quietly, though tears filled her eyes. "You call that living? You nearly burned yourself out to stop them." He turned his head toward the window, the glow of the arc reflecting in his tired eyes. "It was worth it," he said. They remembered what they were. The Empress followed his gaze, her tone thoughtful. "The galaxy will talk about this for centuries," she said. "About the human who commanded gods of metal?" Elias shook his head gently. "No, they'll forget, they always do." He paused, his voice barely above a whisper. "And that's fine. Forgetting is how peace begins." For a long while they sat in silence, the sound of distant repair ships echoing faintly through the palace. Then the Ark's voice spoke softly through the intercom. "Captain status unstable, neural degradation detected." Elias smiled sadly. "Even the ship knows when to say goodbye." The Empress turned sharply toward him. "Don't speak like that." But he only looked at her, calm and kind. "Every captain leaves their post someday," he said. "The question is who takes the helm after." She looked confused. "You mean me?" He nodded slightly. "You heard it, you calmed it. You made the Ark listen when even I could not." The Empress stepped back, shaking her head. "I am not human." Elias's voice softened. "You're more human than most I've known." He reached for her hand, placing a small crystal core, the same one he once told her could shut the Ark down, into her palm. "It won't destroy it anymore," he said. "I changed the code. Now it will listen to your voice." She looked down at it, trembling. "Why me?" "Because," he said, "you saw mercy where others saw weakness. That's what kept us alive once outside." The Ark began to move again, slowly, deliberately. Its lights brightened as if it sensed what was happening inside the palace. The Empress looked toward the window, her throat tight. "Where will you go?" she asked. Elias smiled faintly. "Wherever the silence needs me." He stood with effort, walking toward the balcony overlooking the shining capital. Below them, millions of beings looked up at the human who had saved them. No banners, no cheers, only reverent quiet. Elias turned to her one last time. "Your world is safe now," he said. "But remember this, peace isn't the absence of war. It's the choice not to start one." The Empress felt her heart ache. "And you, Elias, what choice do you make?" He smiled, a small, tired smile. To rest, the Ark of Terra descended a beam of soft light, surrounding him, lifting him gently from the balcony. The Empress reached out instinctively, her voice trembling. "Elias." He looked down at her, eyes bright with golden light. "Take care of them," he said. "And when they ask who taught you mercy, tell them it was a human." The beam carried him upward, the light growing stronger until he vanished within it. The Ark rose higher, its golden glow spreading across the sky one last time. Then, with a deep sound like the heartbeat of the universe, it folded into the void, leaving only silence and dawn. For hours the Empress stood there. Staring at the empty sky, the palace felt too large, too quiet, yet she did not cry. She turned the crystal core in her hand, and for a moment she thought she heard his voice, faint but clear. "Home is where you are needed." She smiled through the tears that finally came. "Then you will always have a home here," she whispered years later. Songs would still be sung across the stars about the day an alien queen married a human out of pity, and how that human saved her world with the strength of his heart. They would call him the last human of Terra, but those who truly remembered knew the truth. He was not the last. He was the first to remind the galaxy what humanity really meant.